Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're out the range with a rifle that you have seen previously on the channel when I did my Echo AR2 trigger video. You did see a Fightlite MCR belt-fed 5.56 rifle. I've since then been sent an MCR by Fightlite to evaluate. So what the Fightlite upper is a conversion for a standard AR-15 lower that gives you belt-fed capability on the rifle. And it's extremely lightweight. It was formerly known as the Ares Shrike, and now it's been rebranded as the Fightlite MCR. And my first experience with it was the one that I had used in that Echo AR2 video. I hadn't shot one before then. Now, I've been following the development of what was then called the Shrike since it first started many years ago. And I got to know Jeff Herring, who is the owner of Fightlite or Ares. But for whatever reason, we never really connected, and I've always wanted to take a look at one of these guns. Now, they sent this gun out to me to evaluate, to have some fun with and play with, and I plan on putting it through its paces and using it quite a bit. Given its lightweight, assuming this thing is 100% reliable or breaks in to be 100% reliable, I might take this thing into the field to go pig hunting. I mean, how much fun would that be to be able to take a belt-fed 5.56 and hang a nutsack off of it, which you can do with this adapter that goes into the magazine well, and hunt pigs. That would just be too much fun. Now, this is its first range session. We've only put 30 rounds through it just to confirm function this morning. So you can see inside, it's still nice and clean. You can see the drag marks from where that first 30 rounds went through. The first 30 that we put through it was some ZQI M855 ball. This stuff is no longer available, I don't think. I know that there's been some export bans out of Turkey with the ammunition because they're currently involved in a ground war, I believe, with Syria, so that ammunition's kind of on hold. Finding M855 ball, it can be a little bit challenging. This gun likes hotter ammunition from what I've read and been told, but we've brought out some different ammunition that's a little bit easier to come by, and we have some Wolf Gold, which is, in essence, Taiwanese M193 ball, and then we have some Freedom Munitions. This is their new stuff. This is a 223 load, 55 grain full metal jacket, new again. And so we have 20 rounds loaded of each type, and we're just going to run it through the MCR here really quick to see how it functions. The gun, like I said, was set up so that it could function well with heavyweight bullets. 62 grain bullets are heavier. I want to see how it functions with the 55 grain stuff. You do have a gas regulator here on the end of the barrel. It shipped to me on the 2 position setting, and I had one failure to feed. The bolt just didn't have enough energy to strip the round out of the belt and chamber it. The bolt just quite didn't go home, and you probably saw that in my Echo AR2 video. I had to help that bolt home once with my thumb while I was doing belt dumps with it using the Echo 2. They do say that you need to break the guns in before they become 100% reliable. I've seen videos of these on machine gun lowers, which we'll probably do to this at some point. I will post sample a machine gun M16 lower through Definitive Arms and run it as a full auto as well. But right now it's just a semi-automatic, and I may also drop in an Echo trigger just to see how it works. So basically, well, first of all, it's super lightweight, guys. This thing is really lightweight. I did bring a saw out here, the Para model, to compare it to, but this thing feels like it's half the weight of a saw, which is really cool. It doesn't feel much heavier than one of those old hideous Rock River Arms AR-15s that had the quad rails on them. It was back in a time when AR-15s were getting heavier and heavier with these big goofy rails. AR-15s are getting much lighter again. That's the new trend. But this gun by itself does not feel all that heavy. The gun does have quick change barrel capabilities. It has standard controls for an AR-15. You'll see a selector fire, or your selector for your fire controls there. It does not have a third position. It has a special bolt catch that you do have to replace on your AR-15 lower if you're going to run the Shrike. Well, I'm sorry, I'm thinking old school days. The MCR upper. So if you want to charge the weapon, it has a fold down bolt charging handle here, and I can pull it to the rear and push down on the ping pong, and the bolt is now locked to the rear, just like a standard AR-15. The guns will also feed from AR-15 magazines. You don't have to use this. We'll give that a try later in this video as well. So you just have this button here. It's very familiar to any of you guys that may have used a saw before. You just open up your top cover. There's your feed tray, your feed paws. So it's very similar looking to just about every other belt fed out there. With the bolt locked to the rear, I can also just push this tab right here and pull forward, and the barrel comes right out of the gun. That's simple. So if you have multiple barrels and you're running it really, really hard, you can easily pop that barrel out. Put it back together. Just slide the barrel in. That's the gas tube right there, or the gas piston, I should say. Slide that in, push the button down, wiggle it around until it locks into place, and the gun's ready to go again. In the future, we'll do some accuracy tests with it, much like we did the saw. Everything seems to lock up nice and tight. I'm going to go ahead now and put 20 rounds of the ZQI M855 ball in there. So this is the equivalent of SS109. And I have the bolt locked to the rear. You put the sunny side down, set it into the feed tray like so, hold it in place, and just close your upper. And now if I let this bolt go home with the ping pong paddle, it chambers around. One of the little M27 links falls out the side of the gun. I'm going to shoot it over the table because I'm trying to keep a hold of these M27 links. Yeah, you might want to come around to the other side because this thing has a muzzle brake on it that's pretty effective, and it has quite the blast. We're only about 20, well, let's say more like 30 or 40 yards from our challenge steel target down there. It's our disposable beater target. These M855 rounds are really going to put a dent in it, but we're going to smack that with this. It seems like the sights are off to the right just a little bit. I'll adjust the sights later. I'm going to wind up putting a red dot sight up here to see how it holds zero as well. So again, 20 rounds of ZQI. All right, bolt does not lock open on the last shot fired, so it made it through that belt just fine. As with most belt feds, you're gonna have to open it up and clear it out of the way. So that was military ball. Now let's see what happens with the lighter 55 grain stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and lock the bolt to the rear again. You can see me do that by pulling the charging handle to the rear, pushing down on the bottom portion of the ping pong paddle. If you're used to the AR-15, that's a pretty natural function for you. I take my links, lay them in there. Close that top cover, and I'm going to let the bolt go home. I'm going to put the folding charging handle up, let that bolt go home, chambers around. Now let's see if it'll run 20 rounds of just regular old Wolf Gold 55 grain stuff. All right. So that's the type of failure that you'll see, where it doesn't quite have enough energy to strip the round out of the M27 links. And one thing I've noticed is some of these links, when you put them together, really hard to push the round into the link, and you'll probably want to stop and take that link out of the mix because that's the only type of failure I've seen this morning. But a second try gets it home. And that's it, she's empty. So we had that one failure. And again, I remember when I was loading the belts on this, I said to Jason, this is the one that's going to cause a malfunction because it was so tight. Now, I've not lubricated the links. You'll want to stretch the links out, use them quite a bit, try to reclaim them, keep using them, because the easier they are to load, the more likely it is that the gun's going to work fine. Keep in mind, guys, the reason you don't see a whole lot of belt-fed upper AR-15s is the engineering that goes into it is very, very challenging, because you're working with a spring that was designed to work just on a standard AR-15 or standard type rifle. It wasn't intended to operate a feed mechanism on a belt fed. So getting enough spring energy and getting enough gas is a fine balance to make these things work. And it's taken Fightlight many years to perfect that balance to get this gun to where it is today, which is actually pretty impressive, especially given the fact it's so much lighter than something like the M249 SAW. All right, so now we have some of the Freedom munitions. This is just standard 223. This should be some of the weakest stuff that we fired. Go ahead and pull the bolt to the rear here, lock it open. You don't have to do this. I just choose to do it. Lay the rounds in. Go ahead and close the top cover. All right, strip that first round by letting the bolt go home. And didn't quite get it out of the belt. Let's go ahead and try one more time. There we go. All right. Now they do also tell you that you want to fire about 500 rounds to this gun, and I do highly recommend, again, using the same links over and over again so you stretch them out a little bit. Makes the gun feed a little bit more reliably. All right, so that seemed to be flawless function that time. You can see how the gun's wearing. It came with grease on it, so I'm just running it. Almost feels like the stuff I like, the Battleborn. It's a pretty thick grease. I'm gonna lube the gun up just a little bit more now, but so far so good. I think it's going really, really well. This gun's cycling, in essence, you know, just standard 5.56, 223, 55 grain stuff. And so I'm going to continue to shoot it this afternoon. I'm bringing you guys along just to do the break-in procedure on the gun. Again, they say about 500 rounds is what you need through it to get it to optimum performance. And we're going to try to get at least close to 500 rounds this afternoon. So I hope you enjoy the video, guys. We got some ammunition to belt up here now. The one thing about the MCR that I think is really neat is the fact that the standard AR-15 magazine still works in the gun, feeding through the existing magazine well of your lower. Of course, the SAW accepts standard AR-15 M16 magazines as well through the side, but I've also had SAWs in the past pretty much mangle the magazines when you put them in there. So I'm going to take a standard Lancer 5 magazine here. I've taken out my adapter that holds the nutsack. I have to check the Jeep and see if I have a nutsack in there so we can play with that too this afternoon. But this is just some Freedom Munitions 55 grain ball stuff. I'm just going to go ahead and stick the magazine into the gun. Now keep in mind, I've done nothing but take this out of the magazine well. I've changed nothing on the upper end of the gun. I'm going to go ahead and charge the rifle. And I'm going to shoot that same target there. And just like a standard M16, I can feel that bolt lock to the rear. 100% reliability with the magazine feed. Guys, that is just freaking cool. I have to admit, this gun seems to be pretty awesome. I wish I could hand this to you guys and let you feel just how lightweight this thing is. What a neat idea. Now, as far as the military weapon goes, the only downside to this that I could really see is the fact that it fires from a closed bolt. If you do that, when you run a lot of ammunition through the gun, you run the very real possibility of a cook-off. And with a belt-fed machine gun, you probably get to that point fairly quickly. I've not seen the testing that the guys at Fight Light have done yet to see how far they can go with it firing from a closed bolt, but perhaps in the future, we'll be able to find out for ourselves. We'll shoot one until we can get it to cook off. That won't be this afternoon. All right, now I do need to go belt some ammunition up and see if I can find a nutsack in peaches. That's kind of a weird thing to say, find a nutsack in peaches. Right. So this is the SAW Para from Copper Custom, and this gun we took out, and on its maiden voyage we broadcast it live on Facebook or on Instagram, I think it was, and the gun had some problems. It didn't like feeding from its belt, but when we used magazines in it, you know, standard USGI magazines, the gun seemed to run okay. I haven't messed with it much. We did clean it. I took it apart and checked everything on the inside. You can see the gun is nice and clean and shiny. We're going to put some of the ZQI stuff through it first and see if it's working. We're using some CLP for lubrication, but everything looks like it's in good working order. Hopefully this little guy starts working this afternoon. If it doesn't like the ZQI, we'll try something different. So to load this weapon, it's the exact same way. You just lay the rounds in there. Now I know you guys that are in the military are going to cringe when you see what I'm about to do, but this is how the semi-automatic works. Now on the full auto, you pull the bolt to the rear, put the rounds in the feed tray, then close this, and you do that to prevent the feed system from being damaged by slamming the top cover down. Well, this is a closed bolt semi-automatic, and there's no way that you can really do that except hold the bolt to the rear, try to put that in there, and then try to hold the rounds and try to, you need 3 hands, arms. So this is the only real way to operate the semi-automatic saws. Now I'm getting a bunch of grease somewhere. I think I oiled this thing up way too good last time. We kept putting oil on it, trying to get it to work. And now I'm going to go ahead and charge the weapon. And we should be good to go. And I think we have 20 or 30 rounds here of the ZQI stuff. Let's see if this Elcan M145 is zeroed or not. And that's it. Nice! She ran flawlessly. And the M145 is zeroed. I'm glad this thing's working. I was really upset there in the beginning. Now, keep in mind, these links that we're using are stretched out a bit. And we're trying to keep the links versus constantly using new ones, so we do stretch them out. But that's awesome. Now, the recoil impulse on this is much lighter, but if you take a look at the MCR next to the saw, you're going to find that the MCR is a much smaller package. Now you'll notice I'm holding the MCR up with one hand. There is no way, unless I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger, that I can really hold this up for one hand for very long, because this gun is heavy. This gun literally weighs twice as much as the MCR, which feels like just a decked out AR-15 for the most part. It's very lightweight, easy to manipulate, easy to maneuver. It feels just like an M4 with a slightly larger rail on it and a little bit more weight over the center section here, which balances out really nice. So all things considered, both of these being closed bolt guns, yes, this one is cool because it's a semi-automatic version of an actual military rifle, but this MCR is pretty freaking neat given the fact that it is based on the AR-15, and I'm just excited to be shooting it. So let's see if this one can continue to work. Now, the only problem that we've had with the MCR is just the fact it just doesn't have enough energy to strip those rounds from the links. Hopefully stretching the links will help. Plus, you can also go with a heavier buffer or a heavier spring, which will then give more force going forward. You do have a selectable gas setting on the MCR. All right, well, it's cool. I just wanted to show you guys the difference between the MCR and the saw. You'll notice that their top covers are different in size. You'll notice the length of travel here, and the saw is much greater than it is on the MCR. And this is what presents most of those engineering challenges, trying to get a belt-fed system to work within the constraints of a standard AR-15 size chassis system. This is actually a stroke of genius, in my opinion. I might be biased because I followed this thing from the early on days, from when it was the Shrike. I always wanted to get my hands on one, and now I'm really glad I have the opportunity to shoot this, and it's fun because I'm able to actually shoot it side by side with the new M249S from FN. All right, let's belt up some more ammunition. Wow, there we go. Cycled right through that. That's kind of highly effective muzzle brake on it, man. That thing is kind of blowing gas back towards me. I can feel it shooting it. This time I'll leave the bolt home just to see how well it feeds. All right, so now I'm gonna have to pull the bolt to the rear and let it go with the belt in it. That's probably the preferred way. And another 25 rounds of Freedom 55 grain stuff. And again, flawless function. I'd say things are going pretty good for the MCR. Again, today's range session was just to get some rounds through it and see what it likes. Fortunately, it's running my really affordable Freedom Munitions stuff. I was kind of worried it wouldn't, but we're seeing 100% function now. I did put some CLP in the gun. I am noticing some brass shavings building up in there, which is typical for any type of belt-fed weapon. The saw, you'll always find shavings in it and stuff like that. I got to try to keep my links because These things are actually valuable. But yeah, I mean, that's normal. So you do want to clean your belt-fed weapons as much as you can, because that debris will accumulate and eventually start to cause malfunctions. But yeah, just spray a little bit of CLP in it. I haven't cleaned it, and she's running like a top right now. I'm really excited about this thing, man. I want to put a night vision sight on a thermal or something, take this thing pig hunting, because it's light enough. If you guys have ever carried around a saw, you'll know how uncomfortable that is to carry that weapon and to carry ammunition for it. This thing you could carry around very easily in the woods just with a standard Savvy Sniper sling, which is my preferred slings. And this thing would not be too much of a burden at all. And just put like a nutsack on it, and I could probably go out and hunt pigs all night long and never have to change the belt or anything else. But I could also carry around some 30-round magazines as backups just in case I start to run low. I don't know, all the possibilities. I'm getting pretty excited about this little MCR. I'm really, really glad to have this opportunity to put my hands on one. I pretty much consider myself an average guy in terms of how I go about doing things, and one of the things I very rarely do is read an owner's manual, and sometimes I pay the price for that. Well, I haven't read the owner's manual on the MCR. However, I am curious whether or not I can field strip it, given its familiarity to me, just because it's so similar to an AR-15 with a belt-fed mechanism on top of it, which I've seen before in other weapons. I just want to see if I can field strip this thing and put it back together. So, first I'm going to make sure the weapon's clear. I'm going to lift up the top cover, and I'm going to have to pull the bolt to the rear to do that. And the chamber is clear, so the bolt's home. I'm going to go ahead, I think, first and lock the bolt to the rear. And now I'm going to remove the barrel. You have this little handle right here that does not fold or move. It just attaches to the barrel. Pinch once you have the bolt locked to the rear, and the barrel comes off that easily. And then your gas piston system is right there as well. One thing you'll notice is that on the gas piston, it's actually big enough where you can get a case in there to use it as leverage in case it gets carbon caked. All right, now I got the barrel out of this guy. I'm going to go ahead and separate the uppers and lowers. Let's see if I have a 5.56 round around here. I bet you scavenge the ground here. I can find something to push on it with. Oh, look at this, an unfired 9mm bullet. Let's see if I can pop these pins on. I imagine they fit pretty tight. That one's really tight. Let's try the front pin. Might help if you let the bolt go home, right? There we go. All right, not as tight as I thought. I had the bolt locked to the rear. All right, separate the upper and lower. And here we have just your standard AR-15 fire controls, and that makes sense given the fact that that a echo trigger will drop right into this bad boy. This is the actual Fight Light lower, and it has some lightning cuts in it, and this does feel really lightweight. Looks to me like perhaps they did shave some weight from the lower receiver itself, but you can pin this to any standard AR-15 lower. The only thing that you'll have to swap out is your paddles. You can see here has a paddle that's designed to clear the upper receiver. So you stride this pin out, put this paddle release in, put the pin back, and your lower is now capable of accepting the MCR upper. So on the upper side of the house, let's lift up the top cover here, flip up the feed tray. I'm guessing just like an AR-15, it's going to pull out the rear. Now it looks like perhaps I have to pull something out right here because it won't clear this rear section unless I do. It looks like it's cut out there for something. Does it move to the side? Or did I push down? Ah, I pushed down. See guys, I can figure this out. So here's your little nub that actually operates the feed pawls right here, and it won't clear this back section, right? I'm like, I saw that square cut right there thinking maybe it pulled out the top. It doesn't. It's just a detent. You just push down on it and make sure it doesn't go flying. And now my bolt will come out the rear. Now you can tell this is significantly different from a standard AR-15 bolt carrier. So it looks like it uses pretty much a standard AR-15 bolt, although it is different. It is considerably different. Right here, the gas system is on the side of the gun, so this is the tappet where the gas piston arm, or the gas piston itself, acts with the bolt. You'll also notice here in the rear, it's cut and tapered to prevent tilt. So on a lot of gas piston driven ARs, the piston, this little tappet's on top, and the bolt naturally wants to tilt this way. With the tappet being on this side, you would think that it would naturally want to tilt side to side, but luckily the tolerances are such that hopefully it will keep it from wiggling too much, but they've tapered the rear end here, so you shouldn't run into any problems. Go ahead and wipe this off while I have it apart. Now it looks to me like there is a standard M16 firing pin in it. You'll notice it has standard cut here in the rear. That's again why it works with the Echo 2 AR trigger system. Have a little cotter pin, just like you would normally use to take apart an AR to get the firing pin out and the bolt out. This is where I'm really going into dangerous territory, because I don't know if it's going to release this little spring here on top or not. But let's go ahead and see what happens. I probably won't be able to get this thing back together. And if I can't, it'll be the end of the video for the day. Okay, so it doesn't seem to hold that in. Seems that perhaps it's just the firing pin. Maybe. Huh. Yeah, that firing pin needs to come out of there. There we go. Just sticking a little bit. I'm figuring this out a little bit at a time. So it's not too dissimilar from an AR-15. Then I'm going to rotate this out, take it out, and there's the bolt. So it's slightly different from an AR-15. And again, guys, I've not read the owner's manual. I'm just kind of winging it here. So I've completely field stripped the gun. I'm going to clean it up a little bit while I have it apart. It's really not all that dirty. So since it's not direct gas impingement, you're not getting a lot of carbon blown back into the action. I'm going to grab some of my my Battleborn grease probably before I put it back together, and put some grease on everything. If I have it in the car, dang it, I may not. Alright, so there you go, guys. That's field stripping it. I'm going to wipe down the inside here real quick. It's not all that dirty. Let's just see if we can get it put back together. Alright, put the bolt in. The ejector, it ejects out this way, so it's going to fling it that way. Alright, that looks like it's the right way. Put the cam pin in. It should prevent you from putting it together backwards, which is something I may be trying to do right now. Alright, there we go. Alright, so I got the cam pin in place. Now, oh, this thing does turn. Look at that, guys. This does come out. And that pin does hold it in place. I'm learning as I go along here. So this is your little actuator for your feed system. Looks like it can go in either way. Hope I'm right, because if I'm not... So there's a few things, extra things you have to line up here. Your firing pin seems to play a role in keeping it all held together, obviously. I don't know what problem I've run into here. Maybe this goes this way. There we go. All right. Now, something, aha, so the firing pin has got to be on the other side of that so it can protrude. So the firing pin's got to be on the inside of this little cam surface here, because I noticed it wasn't protruding. Now the firing pin protrudes. And I'm figuring this out slowly but surely, guys. All right, now I got to just put the cotter pin in, and that went in surprisingly easy. And it looks like I've put my bolt carrier group back together again. And I didn't read the instructions. Jeff, if you're watching this, I hope you're proud of me. All right. He's probably cringing if he's watching this. All right. So, now I noticed putting it back to, taking it out, putting it back together is a little bit different. You have to rotate some parts and stuff here. I'm just going to kind of wipe out some of the carbon while I have it apart. So you put the bolt in, rotate it over. That's what that slot right there is. See how it's rotating? It rotates in, push down on the little detent. You got to make sure that your bolt's forward, which I didn't. Rotates into place. Push down on your little detent, pop, there we go. All right, that's back together. That's surprisingly easy. All right, so it looks like the upper assembly's done. Put the lower back on it. Just a simple matter of pinning the upper to the lower. It'd be pretty hard for me to screw that up, but if anybody could, it would be me. All right, so we got that done. Simple function check seems to prove that that's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and lock the bolt to the rear and put the barrel back in the unit. Just slide the barrel in, get everything lined up, and then all you have to do is just push down this tab, wiggle it around until it seats, and when it locks into place, you're good to go. That's it, guys. Huh, that is surprisingly simple. Like I said, hadn't read the manual, just kind of figured it out on my own. And yes, it's considerably different than an AR-15 when you get into the bolt carrier group, but if you're familiar with the AR-15, it's easy enough to pick up, obviously. Pretty neat stuff. I know this video's been a little bit long, but that's mostly because I wanted to show you the disassembly procedure of the MCR coming from the perspective of somebody that's never taken one apart before and from somebody that has a fairly good knowledge of the AR-15 rifle itself and having not read the manual. I just wanted to see how intuitive it was, and that's interesting from, let's say, a military or grunt standpoint. How simple is it for the soldier in the field to disassemble the gun? And in my opinion, it seems to be fairly easy to disassemble. And I think that would be a consideration considering I believe Fight Light is probably targeting military sales either here in the United States or perhaps elsewhere. When they call it a Fight Light rifle, I understand now the name changed from Ares Defense to Fight Light because this rifle is very lightweight by comparison to the M249S saw that you see here. This saw feels like a car. I mean, this thing is a tank. This MCR is a lightweight rifle by comparison. It just feels like maybe a 20-inch barreled AR-15 with some accessories on it. It's not that heavy. I can easily hold it with one hand. It's just a nice lightweight rifle that would be easy to carry it around. Guys, I'm going to ask that you do two things. First of all, please swing by and check out Copper Custom. It's our online store. If you want to help support us here at the Military Arms Channel, it's the best possible way to do that. Swing by, check it out. We have a brand new website. I think it's probably the best e-commerce site anywhere on the internet, but you guys be the judge. That's coppercustom.com. Also, please join the NRA. We have 4 years, hopefully 4 years, to get rid of some of these gun laws that we live underneath. And right now, I'm advocating for the NRA, not because the NRA is paying me, they're not. But there is a link down below, and I urge you to get in the fight and help us collectively to fight these gun laws and not just prevent new gun laws from going on the books, but get some of them that are already on the books off, like the Hearing Protection Act. Joining the NRA is a great way to do that, to become active in the fight. It's under new leadership with Pete Brownell, and the link that you follow below will send me money. So please share that link. Post it all over the place, because I get more money, but I don't keep that money. I give it to Hero Hunt, which is a 503 nonprofit organization that helps wounded warriors and first responders. That includes fire, that includes police and EMT. It's a very noble cause. I've gone into the field and hunted with those guys, and they do great work. So please join the NRA. Please use the link below, because you're helping a great group of guys that help, again, our wounded warriors and first responders. All right, guys, here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and charge the gun up, fire off a few more rounds, throw her in peaches, and go take it apart again and clean it, because maybe next time you see it, it might have an Echo AR2 system in it. We'll see. We'll talk to you guys soon. That is the sound of freedom.